And though it's been said many times, many ways, Merry Christmas to you. Hello, everybody. Of course, I don't get to see the stats here. So when I say hello, everybody, I could be talking to almost nobody, except, of course, Lady Wendelin, who is contractually obligated to be looking at this nonsense. And I am indeed live. Oh, I'm telling you what, I'm tired. I mean, I'm alive, but I'm tired. That's for sure. So welcome to Dad's Den of Pop Culture, everybody. This is the last stream until Christmas. So Merry Christmas. And Hanukkah is coming right down to the wire here. I've been following William Shatner lighting his menorah through Hanukkah on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. And I'm trying to think now if yesterday was day 6 or day 7. So today might be the last day of Hanukkah, or maybe tomorrow. I'm not positive. But happy Hanukkah to folks out there as well. So what are we doing today in the den, aside from being tired? Since we're down to the end of the year, I thought it would be cool to take a look this week at the indie comics that I acquired this year. And I mean, new publications. And sort of maybe look at what some of the favorites are, but really also just to maybe chat about all of them, because maybe there's some cool stuff that you missed this year that you could go looking for. And next week, I'm going to do something similar with toys, like new toys that showed up in 2025. So, seeing a little chatter tomorrow. Oh, tomorrow's last day. Today is the first day of winter. Okay, yeah, which actually, like Lady Wendelin says, which we wouldn't know that here in Las Vegas. It is fall weather, and I know it's like there's people out there buried under snow going, this you're complaining about? But let me tell you something. My allergies have been freaking horrible for about the last week, maybe 2 weeks, having trouble sleeping the whole 9 yards, i.e. part of why I'm tired. So we're going to take a look at some indie comics this stream, and of course chat about a few other things. And I will chat about some of those other things right now before we get into the comics, because they're not the happiest things to chat about, and I'd like to kind of get that over early. But want to say rest in peace and Godspeed to Gil Gerard, best known for all of us Gen X kids as Buck Rogers. Buck Rogers was a really fun sci-fi show. It was is it Larson? I was going to say Dan Larson. I don't think it's Dan Larson. Glenn Larson production. After he had done Battlestar Galactica, which, got canceled kind of early. It was popular, but it was expensive. They do Buck Rogers, which tried to save some money compared to Battlestar Galactica. And it was a more campy, fun take on things. Lots of, women in skimpy space costumes, kind of like old Star Trek. But I think what really helped hold it together was Gil Gerard, who just had this great charisma. He was just fun to watch. You looked at him and you're like going, this is a cool guy. This is a good guy. And I've always felt like that with him. And that's I don't know if I've ever heard any bad stories about him or anything like that. So rest in peace, Gil Gerard. You were one of the greats, for sure. And of course, and this story was out there everywhere, because how could it not be? The death of Rob Reiner and his wife, really terrible. I was just like, it was kind of late when I saw the news. I was again looking on X, just kind of scrolling, and at that point it just said that they had been found dead, and it was a murder investigation. And I remember just sitting on the couch going, holy shit. And I just said it twice. Like I had to read it about 3 or 4 times. Like it wouldn't sink in because it's just one of those things where you're not expecting something like that to happen. And you wouldn't. And of course, we now know it was most likely their son, who had a lot of drug problems, had mental issues. I just saw something today that he was on some medication for schizophrenia that apparently could make him erratic and dangerous. And you're kind of going, seems an odd medication to put people on that could do that, but I don't know. I don't know. At any rate, though, obviously remembered as Meathead on All in the Family. Went on to direct a lot of great movies: Spinal Tap, Princess Bride, Misery. There are many, many, many more. But a very shocking and a very sad thing to have happen. Obviously, even more so because of when it all took place. So Godspeed. And also, Bob Burns III. Now, there's probably a lot of folks out there who don't know who he is. But you've probably seen him in things. He was one of those guys who played gorillas in movies and TV. He played Tracy the gorilla on the original Ghostbusters live action TV show. He was the sort of gorilla in the classic Robot Monster 3D movie. He played other aliens and things. He was a saucer man. He played a wolf man, a mad mummy, a Metaluna mutant. But maybe more importantly, he has an amazing collection of props and costumes from science fiction and other things as well. He has the original Nostromo from Aliens. He has the only surviving King Kong armature, which it sounds like he wanted in the hands, after he had passed away, of Peter Jackson, because he knew he'd take care of it. So he was a man who was really there. He was an archivist. He was a preserver of movie history, and God bless him and Godspeed to Bob Burns. And apparently also an amazingly nice man. He and his wife would give tours through their collection to people, and he just had a million stories and just really good stuff. And I will also say this, because it occurred to me afterwards, and so I don't have an image, but also Anthony Geary passed away, known for playing Luke Spencer on General Hospital, the whole Luke and Laura thing that, if you're Gen X, you probably have heard Luke and Laura, even if you never watched a soap opera in your life. Of course, for me, that was one of my mom's soap operas. So I would see it like on summer vacation, Christmas break, summer vacation, especially in Vegas. We'd have some weeks where it gets pretty dang hot. You didn't play outside a lot. So there's a lot of times you'd be at home, and, back in the day when you only had like one TV in the house, your mom's soap operas are on and you'd catch stuff. So I kind of knew who the characters were, from back in the day, but he was also in the classic cult film UHF, from Weird Al, played the weird scientist guy, which I'll be honest with you, I probably watched that movie several times. I mean, I know I went and watched it in the theater with my buddy. But I probably watched it many times before I realized that it was Anthony Geary playing that role, because he looks a lot different in it. But, so another sad passing, it's just like if you're my age, you're just at that stage in life where you're losing a lot of people who were, important to you in a pop culture sort of way. Obviously not people that you knew personally, but folks that you watched on TV. It's markings of the passage of time, but God bless all of them. For slightly happier news, I did also want to bring up, though, well, I say slightly happier, much happier news, in fact, because there's nothing happy about that other news at all. there's a lot of cartoons that are showing up right now on Tubi. I mentioned, I think maybe a week ago, that Pirates of Darkwater had showed up, which I've now finally gotten to watch the whole series, which is sadly pretty short. It was a really good series. Should have survived, didn't, but I have finally gotten to watch all of that. But now they've also added, well, in some of these they added a couple weeks ago, but you got Centurions, Challenge of the GoBots, the Mr. T cartoon, the Pac-Man cartoon, Silverhawks just popped up there, and Thundarr the Barbarian. So if you've been looking for Thundarr the Barbarian lately, it's on Tubi at the moment. So I don't know who they inked to deal with, but they're getting a lot of cool old 80s cartoons up there. And so if you're like me, that's some good stuff to pass the time with, a lot of good memories. Let's start taking a look at some of these indie books that came out in this last year. And I don't have a particular organization of these things at the moment. I'm going alphabetical. So don't take, right now we're not looking at what are my favorites. I just wanted to kind of review what they were, chat about them a little bit. And again, these are things you might want to go looking for if they're things you missed along the way. Right off the bat, looking at some of the big books, as in size, dimensions. The Atlantean I've talked about a few times. This is Atlantean issue 3. Atlantean comes from Randy Zimmerman and Russ Leach, and it is essentially stories of King Cole. If I can open this thing. Oh, that's not bad. Stories of King Cole. It's done very much in the style of the old Savage Sword of Conan books, black and white. They're great. They're great. And these are among my favorite things that I've come across recently. I've had a lot of fun. It's just good old fashioned sword and sorcery kind of stuff, and I've missed having that stuff around. I was a huge fan of the old Savage Sword of Conan. Much more so, honestly, even than the Conan comic books. I didn't have a lot of the Conan comic books, but I could pick up the Savage Sword of Conan, and often Conan Saga, which I think were just the reprints, just at like 7-Elevens and stuff. So even after I sort of got out of comic books, I was still grabbing a lot of those. Also this year, and I'm looking, I don't have a bunch of notes down on all these things, so I'm looking at credits here. This one have, I guess it didn't have the credit right off the bat. Okay. Well, it is from Nelson and Oren, and it is Band of the Crow. Now, this is more in like the bande dessinée size of books. We got sort of there we go, little kind of a slipcover on it. And I got to tell you something. This book is gorgeous. I mean, fantastic art, fantastic coloring. It's a really pretty book. It's a fantasy adventure. And it was an interesting story. It sets a lot of stuff up, that you got this young man who is sort of a wizard in training. So a little tiny bit of Harry Potter type vibes, with like Hogwarts, but he's part of the school. And he's at a stage where he's supposed to be, he has like this test he has to go through. Yeah, there we go. That's perfect. He has a test he has to go through that involves going through this maze, and you're going to be challenged in there. And he had initially failed his challenge, which many have, and so that he kind of goes back in and etc. It's really good. It's really good. Band of the Crow is an excellent book, and this is definitely one, just like with the Atlantean, where I am definitely looking for the follow-ups. I don't know if that'll be 2026, if it'll take a little bit longer, but I'm on board for more Band of the Crow. It's really fantastically done. And another nice big size book. Again, kind of bande dessinée size. more or less, is the Dracula series. I'm kind of covering part of the title there, from Kelly Jones and Matt Wagner. This is book 2, The Brides. Book 1 told the story of Dracula sort of gaining his powers. I'm like, okay, can I show that? No. This is a book for grown-ups. It's, there's sex and violence and there's gore and things of that nature. So it is probably not for everybody. And it's probably at the limit of me for a lot of that kind of stuff. Oh yeah, that's another. Okay, here's a page that's safe. When you're doing this, you got to look for the safe pages. But the Kelly Jones artwork is fantastic, and it's a really good story. It's really kind of a history of Dracula. So the first book is him, becoming a vampire, essentially, and how that happens, and involves like the invasion of the Turks into Wallachia, and him having to retreat from them, and then basically gaining tutoring from the devil and magic so that he could get his revenge and reconquer. This one is the origin of Dracula's brides, how that comes about, why it comes about, what goes on with that. The third one, which I've already, pre-ordered, I guess you could say, on the crowdfunder, is The Count. And I believe that's going to be telling the story of him going to London. Well, I know it is, because that's kind of how the Brides ends, with that whole thing of he's going to London now. And so that's going to be more obviously working off of Bram Stoker's story. But it's really fantastic art and really worthwhile in that regard at a minimum, even if you don't want to read the story. Now, story-wise, I think the only problem with it, and it's not a problem, but it's that it is a history. Again, I should be holding this up while I'm talking about it. I'm a bad person. It's a history more than a narrative. So it's kind of like the Silmarillion rather than Lord of the Rings. So it's not like a story where you're following the protagonist going through the challenges. It's more of a history, but it's a really well done history. And Wagner takes a lot of pains to bring a lot of different things into what he's doing. So very awesome stuff. All 3 of these great books, and are all 3 series that I'm collecting. So I'm definitely down on them. You'll find that I'm not really going to be talking about a lot of stuff that disappointed me. Most of the stuff I got, and granted, I don't just grab everything. I take, I kind of read through, and does it look like an art I'm going to like? Does it look like a concept I like? Is it a new creator I want to give a chance to? There's stuff that I go, that looks awesome, but it's not really for me, that I leave behind. So the nice part of that is I don't get a lot of disappointments when I do this stuff. Let's go through a few more of these. I'm not going to take them all out of. I got to try to do it so we don't have a lot of. Yeah, especially with the foil covers, it's difficult. So this is Black Phantom. Now this is the second in a series, although it begins a new storyline called Holy Terror. So this is Holy Terror number 1. Interesting character from Chad Townsend, who is essentially sort of, I didn't want to take all these out of bags, but I think I'm going to have to, because with the plastic bag, it really wants to reflect. And I do like to show some of the art in these dudes. I guess we got a little time, so what the heck. So Black Phantom, Holy Terror. He's kind of like this undead. He's almost like an undead Captain America. It's set during World War II, so he's fighting, the Ratsies. And this one involves the spear that was used to pierce Christ's side on the cross. So a little bit of a Indiana Jonesy kind of thing going there. And the bad guys are looking for it. Of course, that was a storyline that you also got a bit of in the old DC, like All-Star Squadron and stuff, that the Spear of Destiny was held by Adolf, and it kept the Allies from being able to go into, I shouldn't say the Allies, but the Allied superheroes from going into Germany. Also this year, we got a bunch of books from Alterna Comics in the Blood Realms series from Robert Geronimo. It's a really cool series. I've enjoyed it. I've collected the whole thing. Actually, I think I'm missing a book that I need to grab that I somehow missed along the way. But good stuff. It's a really epic story. There's a certain amount of a sort of Christian allegory to it. The interior art is black and white, but with black, white, and red, I guess I should say, would be the best way to put it. And it's good. I enjoy it. I've kept up with the series. Here you get there's a sample of some of the art in this one. You got some real bad guys. You got some good guys. This is sort of telling the story of the rise of this one, sort of almost kind of like a crusader type king. Different artist in this one, but the art in the other ones is good too. And it's really good epic fantasy, which I've been getting a lot of in these books, I noticed. And it's not, I always like the fantasy stuff, but I didn't like go hunting for it in comic books a ton. But I'm finding with the indie comics, you get a lot of horror, fantasy, sci-fi, etc., and a little superhero stuff because, Marvel and DC still sort of rule that roost. Although there are a couple things. You know what? I think the one books I don't have that I didn't get out, doggone it, I know when I was trying to prep stuff, is some of the best superhero stuff I've read recently. I've talked about it a ton, but I will mention it here as well. But I thought about that last night. I'm like, did I get those books? Yeah, I got those books out. I definitely got those books out. But I was putting things in order and I'm going, wait a minute, I don't know if I got those books out. But at any rate, a lot of good fantasy stuff coming out. And I've just shown you about 2 or 3 of them. We got a lot of releases this year from Rippaverse, a ton. One of those is Bloodruth. I got the black and white edition. Interesting story about, and I got it. Family comes up a lot in the Rippaverse. But it's a family, with magical abilities and a specific kind of magic, this sort of blood magic. And in this one, it pits her against these demons that she has to conquer. And she first appears in ISOM number 2. So you get to see a little bit of what she can do. In that one, this kind of tells more of her origin. It kind of catches you up. So you could call it kind of a prequel to her appearance in ISOM number 2. Written by Jen and Sylvia Soska, Michael Montanot, and Brett R. Smith doing the art on this one. It was good. I enjoyed Bloodruth. I don't think it's a series I'm keeping up with because I am just at a point where I got to start picking and choosing a little bit. This year, I looked at a lot of stuff, to see what I liked and try things out. And I think in Rippaverse, because Rippaverse is really, they're getting a lot of stuff out right now. So I think there's other comics of theirs I'm focusing on right now rather than Bloodruth. But Bloodruth is a good series. And if you're into sort of a darker, magical kind of thing, you might want to check that one out. Now, this one showed up, and I hadn't talked about it on the stream at the time, but it showed up 2 or 3 weeks ago. And it was one I remember seeing Graham Nolan point out. And Chuck Dixon is one of the people behind it. Story by Richard C. Meyer and Chuck Dixon. Script by Chuck Dixon. Art by Bob C. Harden and Wes St. Clair. Lettering Eric Weathers. Cover Kelsey Shannon. It is called Capture or Kill. This brings to my mind Mad Magazine a little bit, Underground Comics a little bit. It is a comedy. And basically the idea of this book is that the order went out to like SEAL Team 6 to capture or kill bin Laden. But what they really meant was, just kill him. But this takes the idea of, what if they captured him? What if they captured him instead of just killing him? And so it's kind of making fun of politics, and they capture him, and they're like, we got to do something about this guy. We can't hold this guy in a prison in the United States or even Guantanamo Bay. It's too big of a target, for other people. What are we going to do with this guy? And they're like, we got to restage the raid. So they're going to stage a fake raid using like a facility in, I want to say Nevada. I think it was just outside Las Vegas is what they were going for. So it's very satirical, very, very satirical, but really great art. When you're judging art in a lot of these comic books, I think one of the keys of it is not just like, you can judge art from one book to another, right? But does the art work for the story? Does it convey the story? Does it convey the theme and the feel of the story properly? So sometimes like you could look at a particular book, two books, and say, well, book A, that's the superior art. I mean, just look at the line work and the color and all this other stuff, and look at book B and say, but in a way, this art's actually better because it works so much better with the story. Like it just had the perfect vibe to it to get you into it. So maybe it's not like, objectively as good as book A, but it's actually better. But so the art in that one is really, really great. I really enjoyed that. Good. It was a funny book. It's like a lot of chaos. It's definitely one of those things where, it could be turned into a movie. It's one of those kind of books that could be turned into a movie. So this goes into the horror world. It's a Josh Howard book called Dead at 17. Now, this is a series he had done some years ago. He's sort of revamping it now, kind of looking at it from a different point of view than he did in the other one. So you could kind of get both of them, and they work together. I primarily got it because of having discovered Josh Howard's work in T-Bird and Throttle, which is more superhero oriented. But I'm like, I dig his stuff. I'm going to check it out. He's got a very cool art style. Now this is another one with, it's very gory. It's very gory stuff. So let's see if I can find something that will not severely upset YouTube's algorithm and stuff. But you kind of get an idea of his art style. And it's a good book. It's basically this girl who, she's going up against, it's kind of like zombies, but kind of like demons, and some kind of darkness that she has to go after and fight. And I think in the original, it was her friend who was sort of taken, and this is going now from the other girl's perspective. At any rate, it's a solid horror book. I know that it was a very popular series when initially done. So if it's one of those series that maybe you saw back in the day, and you weren't aware of what he was doing with it now, you might want to check that out. Up next, Graham Nolan's Escape from Monster Island. I did talk about this not too long ago in one of these streams, because this one showed up here pretty recently. Let's see if we can find some of the good art in this one. So this is part of a series of books he's done on Monster Island, with these two Navy pilots discovering an island that is full of Jack Kirby-esque giant monsters like he used to draw in Journey into Mystery and all that stuff, like before it was a Thor comic. And you see where a lot of that monster stuff moved into the mainstream Marvel universe as they went. I mean, Groot, for example, is really an old pre-Marvel universe monster character that they kind of revived for the Guardians of the Galaxy when they revamped that concept. So they find this island in the first one, and, you know, they actually do get off of it. Then the second one I want to say is Return to Monster Island. They come back, and then they find out more kind of like the inner workings of the thing. And it ends up being sort of like, the island is sort of like an alien spaceship. It's kind of an alien zoo is the idea behind this thing. If not a zoo or a preserve for these monsters. And it's sort of, you know, like dimension warps elsewhere. And so this one, they end up in orbit around a planet and get involved in all sorts of hijinks as they try to find a way to get back home. So it's action comedy, you know, again, it's monsters, but it's not horror type monsters. It is genuinely funny. Nolan's art is friggin' great in this thing. Very fun books. This is, like I said, this is the third one. So I've kept up with that series, and it's part of his, you know, his Compass Comics universe. So I think we're going to be seeing those characters in further things. I don't know if there will be another specific Monster Island book, but I think we're going to see more of those characters, which I'm happy about. Jonathan Pajot, Matthew Sheehan, God's Dog, Warrior. Now, Jonathan Pajot is an Orthodox Christian. He is an icon carver and an artist. And he and his brother Matthew had come up with an idea that was sort of a sweeping epic with sort of biblical themes to it that centered around, like, you know, the giants from the Bible and St. Christopher, who was oftentimes depicted in medieval art as having the head of a dog. The idea was that Christopher came from sort of the outskirts of the known world, right? And so that's where dog-headed people were located in a lot of universal history. It was really kind of a reference to the fact that people speaking strange languages, it's almost to a person who doesn't understand the language, like the barking of dogs. Didn't necessarily mean they thought they were actually people with dog heads, but, you know, you get that in a lot of medieval stuff. And so this one actually does portray this creature with the head of a dog who's found by these pilgrims. And he's sort of savage, and he joins them on their pilgrimage. And, you know, he's being taught, you know, swordcraft, but also being taught, you know, being civilized, so to speak, as well. It's very rich in symbolism. Now, they do a couple different art styles in it. This is where they're talking about the past and the rise of Babel. So it's kind of intertwined with universal history, very Christian themes, Cain and Abel, and very good. This is the second book that they've done in this epic that they want to tell, and it's another one I'm definitely down for sticking with. We're going to go through a few more of these, and then we'll take a break and look at some new releases that are coming out. So this is another one from Rippaverse. I'm going to keep these in the bags because there are two of them. So this is the Great War of Separation. So one of the things you learn when you start reading the books is it's sort of set in an alternate timeline. And the idea here is it's a America that has become fractured. Texas is its own nation at this point. And of course, the books are primarily set in Flores Park, Texas, you know, made up city. And so this series tells sort of the history of how they got there, how this all took place, what happened to break things up via the federal government, via the Texas government, And it also fills you in on the past of some of the characters that we've seen in the other books, including Brian Solari, who is the leader of Alpha Corps, and ISOM, Avery Stillman. Good stuff, written by Chuck Dixon. Jack Herbert is the artist on this first one. Yeah, and on the second one as well. So it's telling that story of sort of Texas independence and how all that happened. And at the same time, kind of telling you a little bit about the rise of these superhumans and where they all fit into it, getting a little history of the characters. You know, so it's a little bit of a war comic with superheroes in it. Good stuff. I have enjoyed it. And I think it's just a 3-part series. So I believe they just have one more to go on that particular one. And then we also got the continuation of a character called The Horseman. Good character, sort of Punisher-esque when you get down to it. Interesting to me because he's a guy who his heart is sort of in the right place and maybe sort of not in the right place. And he's not super realistic. You know, it's a little bit like a more realistic version of the Punisher, because the Punisher is just like guns a-blazing and getting things done. And this is a guy who doesn't always think things through and gets in over his head. Now, he was introduced particularly in a graphic novel called The Horseman, where he moves his operations from Chicago to Flores Park, and like I said, gets in way over his head. And he ends up basically getting saved by Alpha Corps from a couple people who he was not prepared to deal with, because this is a guy with no superpowers. Body armor, guns, knives, fighting ability. He's ex-military. So what we're getting now with this character is his sort of journey to reality, figuring out what he needs to do. And he's getting smarter along the way, but then he's also getting manipulated a little bit along the way. Good character. I like it. That is a series from Rippaverse that I am definitely sticking with. All right. Let's look at some coming attractions. My desk is like so amazingly full of stuff. Wouldn't believe it. Boop, boop, boop. There's Bob Burns. God bless him. So, few new releases campaigns. I'm not seeing a ton of stuff right now. I think it's because we're in the holiday season. People have maxed out their credit cards at the moment. These are all things that aren't going to be arriving in time for Christmas. So I think there's a little lull in announcements, but there is some cool stuff out there popping. So Betty and Me, #1. This is a facsimile edition that Archie Comics is putting out this year, coming out in early 2026. I actually, and I'm going to show some stuff I got at the comic shop yesterday in a little bit, but I actually picked up an issue of Betty and Me #2 for $1. It's in rough shape, but so this is the first issue that's coming out. It is like their 85th anniversary, so they got maybe a few things they're planning. One of them is the Betty and Veronica pinup special, which is just going to be a book of pinups of Betty and Veronica. Now, before you go, oh, so it's like good girl art. Well, the Archie comics have always been like one half pinup art and one half dad jokes. But these pinups that they would do in their old books weren't just sort of showing off Betty and Veronica. It was also showing off the clothes they were wearing. Because remember, the Archie comics had a large female audience. It was not it may have been made for boys a little bit, but it was probably made more for girls than boys. And remember, women used to buy a lot of comics. I say women, girls. You know, they weren't necessarily adult women who were buying those things, just like adult men weren't buying a lot of comics back in the 50s and into the 60s. They were a huge segment of the comic book market. And you saw that in Archie and all the Archie clones, working slowly on a video, looking at all those Archie clones there used to be. You got a lot of romance comics back in the day. They sold very, very well. The superhero stuff, was always kind of a niche part of the comic book market. And as girls moved away from comic books for whatever reason, and I don't know what it is, it's not like they stopped producing stuff they liked. They left, and then those books mostly went away. When they left and it became primarily a boys market, that's when superheroes became so associated with just American comic books. But even then, and people always say, oh, all America does is superheroes, and in Japan they had blah, blah, blah. It's like, dude, go through American comic book history. And even if you look at a lot of stuff on the shelves now, fantasy, science fiction, horror, adventure, comedy, romance. The romance is mostly gone because, again, the audience for it just doesn't exist anymore. Maybe a generation of girls will start reading that stuff again. Who knows? But right now, it's like, there's a lot more than superhero stuff, but the superhero stuff was the most popular with the Marvel universe, and then DC going more like a universe as well. That was a really interesting concept, and it became extremely popular. So it dominated the sales for so long. But so one of the things you got in these, and you got them also in Supergirl comics, was the idea of girls sending in fashion designs. And then they would pick some of those and put it in pinups, or it would just from the artists would show off different clothes, which, believe it or not, popular with girls to this very day. They like fashion, guys. They just like fashion. And so there was that element of the pinups, as well as just sort of good girl art from Dan DeCarlo. So that's coming out. I don't know if it's January or what. It's just been announced today. I saw it, so I wanted to pop that up there. There's a few things coming from McFarlane here in the near future. I don't think any steady dates have been put out for when they're coming out. The one that caught my eye, especially, and you're looking at this going, oh, I know what caught your eye, you dirty old man. No, to be honest with you, yes, Zatanna, very cool. These are oftentimes very hard to get figure-wise. I don't know if Zatanna, in and of herself, is a figure I would have run out to buy. Maybe if it was in the superpower style, I might have. But it's Detective Chimp. I'm just like, dude, they're doing a Detective Chimp figure? That's friggin' great. That kind of fits into my weird sense of what I like. So there's also an elongated man that they're putting out in the sort of red and black costume that he had. There is I believe I got there, Jack Nicholson looking Joker that's coming out. Now you go, is it 100% Jack Nicholson? Are they getting close without having to actually pay him? I don't know. These are, of course, not actual figures, but, sort of CGI versions, digital versions of what the figures will supposedly look like. But that's coming out. They're also doing Heath Ledger Joker, and a couple other interesting ones. So some interesting stuff coming from McFarlane, and something to keep an eye open for. Again, I don't think we have any dates that have been put out, and I'm not in, because even with the Zatanna one, when I first looked at it, I was like, that almost looks like it's in the style they've used for the Super Friends. But I don't know that she was ever in a Super Friends episode. But, we just got the Zan and Jaina, the Wonder Twins, and the Jaina figure comes with, Gleek, the Astro Chimp. Or no, he's not an Astro Chimp. That's what Aaron Lepresti called his dude in Kid Carter. Space Monkey, sorry. So, and I'm going, oh, that almost looks like the same style of those figures with Detective Chimp instead of Gleek. But I'm going, I don't think either of them were ever in Super Friends. They were in Batman Brave and the Bold. I know Detective Chimp was in there. Detective Chimp, surprisingly enough, not a super well-known DC character. But at any rate, so I don't know. I don't even know what style, what line these figures definitely are going to be fitting into. But we'll see that in the coming months. So DC has announced some facsimiles for March of 2026. Now, this first one, I'm going, I thought they already did this one. unless I'm thinking of the Sensation comics that she was in. But I just did the whole retrospective on Golden Age Wonder Woman, so I might have the cover in my, stuck in my brain. I swear they'd already did this one, but supposedly we got Wonder Woman #1, we got Action Comics #242 with Brainiac. Makes sense, since Brainiac apparently is going to be in the next Superman movie they do, assuming that is still going to be made with all the whole merger stuff, not merger, but buyout things going on. We're going to get Detective Comics #475 with the infamous Joker Fish showing up in that one, and Detective Comics #576, Batman Year 2 Part 1. Maybe they're going to do the entire Batman Year 2. I would not be surprised of that. I got to tell you, some of my favorite non-indie comics that came out this year, which, if I'm honest, is all facsimiles, but really loved getting that Fantastic Four #1 through 12 and the X-Men series they did involving, the whole Phoenix saga and all that stuff. Loved having those issues in my hands that way. If they wanted to do Fantastic Four #13 through 24 in 2026, I'd be okay with it. And they could keep that sucker rolling, because I love these old comic books. I love the chance to be able to get them, in a format that I can easily read. I like that they're going to a floppy format with them, keeping in the ads, and going to more of a newsprint, and I think just reproducing your old comics and keeping them alive and vital in that form might not be a bad idea. I mean, it brought kids into comic books a long time ago. Could bring kids back into comic books now. It's worth a try at this point, because you need them in there. That is for sure. So those are going to be coming out apparently in March of 2026. I did in the last stream, I believe, the last stream, I talked about January, February stuff that's been announced. And then finally, so Hasbro has a bunch of stuff coming out. This is supposed to be pre-order in January, but I don't have a date yet for it. So when I got the Ghost Rider figure that I showed off maybe a stream or two ago, I was like, very cool, love Ghost Rider. Going, man, I wish it was in his classic costume, and it'd be so rad if there was a motorcycle. And apparently if I just waited a few months, there it is, the classic costume, the motorcycle in red. Looks very much like the figure they did for the Marvel Legends Retro, the 3 3/4 inch, which is, by the way, that 3 3/4 inch Ghost Rider on the motorcycle, that is one of the coolest figures that's ever been made, period. It looks great. It's super cool. And you go, this is something you could have sold the kids back in the 70s. Guaranteed. We would have bought that. So this is coming out. I think it's going to be, I think in the 60, but I could, maybe $60 to $70 price range. But it's something I might pick up just because I really, really dig that look. And I love the bike. I love the bike. I wish we had more bikes of that scale for some of these kind of figures, like Captain America, etc. Need a new spider buggy as well. But any rate, okay. And since I clicked to the next frame, the only thing I really watched in the last week that was old that I hadn't seen before was a TV movie that I brought up discovering a while back. I think somebody posted it on X, called The Feminist and the Fuzz. 70s TV movie. And it's you can find it on YouTube. I sat and watched it, and you know what? It's not bad. It's kind of funny. Stars Barbara Eden and David Hartman. He's the cop. Where basically these two people, they can't find a place in San Francisco. The property market's really tight, apartments, etc. They find this place and they end up deciding they're going to share it as roommates, even though, she's a dedicated feminist and he's an old-fashioned guy. Although I got to be honest with you, he's not like an Archie Bunker sort of character who's like saying, yeah, women should be barefoot and pregnant. He's a guy who will open doors for women and thinks that he should, protect them if they're being threatened by large men. So he's not super reactionary, but they decide to become roommates, mostly because he works a night shift. So they're not going to see each other very often anyways, but he's got a fiance played by Farrah Fawcett, who's basically works at the Playboy Club as a Playboy bunny. And she's a doctor, and she's got this boyfriend who's like a super progressive activist lawyer who's always suing people over things. And they don't tell them that they're like in a co-ed sort of environment. And so that leads to some issues, and comedy. But, dude, you get like Barbara Eden, Farrah Fawcett. You also get Julie Newmar, who's playing sort of this kind of zany prostitute, basically. She's really funny in it. She's like a person who gets routinely arrested by David Hartman and his partner because of, she's a streetwalker. And, but he ends up helping her out at one point, which leads to more, zaniness. You also got Joanne Worley in it playing a very militant feminist. And Penny Marshall shows up for a little bit too. Penny Marshall and Farrah Fawcett were both in a shampoo commercial. It had to be about the same time. So I don't know if they knew each other or if that just was like happenstance or what have you. But it was actually, kind of a funny movie. It wasn't too bad, sort of people figuring things out and maybe not being as militant as they think they should be about things or, whatever. But so a little romantic comedy. All right, Feminist in the Fuzz. Let's look at the rest of these indie books that I picked up this year, and then we'll start talking about which ones were sort of my favorites. So the ISOM initial story arc completed this year in ISOM number 3, and this is a thick book. This could have easily been an ISOM number 3 and 4, without a doubt. I liked it. And I've liked the series, and I like the character. There were some great reveals in this one, and I'm trying to what can I show without showing too much? Here's one with Isom and Bloodruth. But we learn a little bit more about his family, and we learn about where his powers are coming from, how they work, why they've sort of been on a low ebb recently. And he has a final confrontation with his particular arch enemy, who is trying to buy him his way into oil. I'm trying to see if I can show this image. I don't want to show too much off, but there's some great moments in that final fight. I like the Isom character because, again, kind of like the Horseman. This is not a character who's got it all figured out. This is not like Batman or Captain America, who are pretty much, they know what they're doing. They're not likely to lose. There's a lot of humanity in there. A little bit more like Spider-Man, for example, that kind of character concept. Makes mistakes, has problems, trying to figure them out, trying to decide, is he going to dedicate himself to actually being this hero, or is he going to go back to his ranch and not have to worry about things, and it's like, yeah, I got to get involved because there's people in danger, but has he committed to this sort of destiny as a hero? And he's also a guy who takes his lumps. He doesn't come out of every fight like smelling like a rose right off the bat. He gets his ass kicked once in a while and has to figure things out and come back and face things down, even though he knows he might lose again. So I really dig that element of the Isom character. Jacqueline Jones is a book that I got just recently, and I did show these off on stream. It's an interesting character. It's sort of a make-believe world kind of deal. It's like Gotham City and Metropolis. And she is this police officer who is kind of an Amazon when you get right down to it. I don't mean Amazon as in, coming from Paradise Island, but she is, she's not a small woman, and she manages to get through the police academy. Books look like they're set in sort of a 1950s, element, right? She gets into the police academy as a woman because she was using the name, or her name got translated like as Jack Jones. They thought it was a guy, basically. But she proved that she could do the work. And I had fun with these. And let me tell you something. She takes some hits. Like, this is, she gets whooped a little bit and comes back strong. Fun character in that regard. The art is a little wonky once in a while, honestly. A little bit wonky, but it works and it tells a story. Carrick Esquivel, Jesse Hansen, Jeremy Cox, Johnny B. Girardi doing these books. There's an issue 1 and an issue 2. I got an alternate cover on issue 2 as well. I liked it. I like Jacqueline Jones. I had fun with that, and I hope they make some more. I think it was an interesting character and an interesting concept, and it was told well. It tells the 2 issues together tell the story of her taking down this mob. There's a woman who's sort of in charge of this crime organization who's pretty cool, and it's good. It's a good book. Good book. Also from Graham Nolan this year, we had Joe Frankenstein, number 3, The Eye of Ra. Now, Joe Frankenstein is about the Frankenstein monster who lives forever and has become a protector of the descendants of Dr. Frankenstein. And he's also opposed to another immortal, although not quite as immortal as him, the Bride. The Bride is the big bad guy, and she has all sorts of contacts in the supernatural underworld, and she has to draw her immortality from people, as opposed to his, which comes just from electricity, more or less. And so this one brings the concept of the mummy into the Joe Frankenstein universe. Again, this is all part of the Compass Comics universe. This one's written and created by Graham Nolan and Chuck Dixon. Art and color by Anthony Gonzalez Clark. Lettering by Carlos M. Mangual. Editing by Graham Nolan. So this one's not illustrated by Graham Nolan. And I love Graham's art in the first 2 Joe Frankenstein books. So I was a little trepidatious about this one. Like, is it going to work for me? And I got to say, man, he did a great job. He did a great job. Gonzalez Clark did. Good stuff. It fits well with the theme of the thing, but it is definitely a different style, but it worked. And so I've been a big fan of Joe Frankenstein. Great book. I would describe it almost like it's like a 60s cartoon that we all wish had been made. It's got a little bit of a, of a Johnny Quest vibe going to it. Now this one goes telling more of a story from the past, about the creature and dealing with the, I don't know how much the Bride comes into it, but dealing with this, I want to say it's I think it's him protecting an earlier descendant of the Frankenstein family who gets involved in archaeology. I believe that's what it was. King Cryptid. Now there's a bunch that came out this year, and I want to say, was it 5 through 9? I think I got the ones that came out this year here. Because I came up with the idea of doing this like at the end of the year. And I'm like, if I thought of this at the beginning of the year, I wasn't even streaming at the beginning of 2025. I would have been making notes all the way through of what's coming out, when it came out, etc. So, I'm kind of going through going, I think this is this year. I'm pretty sure. But King Cryptid from Pete Samedi at Alterna Comics. I guess I had that one upside down because he used two. Now I've got them. Oh, one cover. There's the other cover. Pete Samedi is the guy behind this. He's the writer. Now this one, let's see. Oh, he did. Okay, he did. Interiors by Nick Hunter. He uses different artists on different issues. And the issues have different sort of themes to them at times as well. And he does a good job of the art matching what's going on. So some of these books involve a group of kids who are kind of like, maybe a little bit Goonie-esque, who are, looking for this King Cryptid. So King Cryptid is this legendary creature, This is all set like up in New England, who, is a cryptid. People don't think he's real, but of course there are researchers who do and are trying to find him. And he is a defender of sort of nature and mankind from other cryptids. Although oftentimes the cryptids that he's having to deal with are maybe not as bad as one would think. There are maybe reasons for why they're doing what they're doing. Samedi does some really good work writing these things, making the characters interesting, making the stories interesting. And there are story arcs rolling through them, even though there's sort of, there's the arc with the kids, with one kid who was sort of went missing way back when. And then but you can also tell the arcs are all flowing together. Really interesting the way he's done it. I really enjoy King Cryptid. Floppies, they're not super expensive. Go to alternatecomics.com. You can find that and actually much more as well. But highly suggest King Cryptid. And it's also a book that I think you could put in front of your kids. I don't think you'd have a problem doing that. They're not written to be real spicy or anything. Kordrath, number 2, from Andy Smith and Dennis Turner. Smith, both of them do the story. Andy Smith does the art, color art from Nanjan Jambari, lettering Steve Dutro. Kordrath is fun. It's fantasy, it's barbarian, super buff barbarian, super, hot women kind of thing that if you're an 80s kid and you remember the great barbarian movies we used to get, it's that kind of thing. But there's also a bigger story frame in these involving something else that was a major pastime of kids from the 80s. It's really cleverly done. It's a really fun book. I enjoyed the first one, so I came back for the second. And the next one is involving specifically a demon who shows up in here. I'm trying to see if I can find a good... there's an image of her in that one panel sneaking up on a guy. It's going to involve her because she's sort of, in this one, kind of helps the good guys out a little bit. And I think the next book, it's named after her, Lilith, is going to explore kind of what happens after that. I believe that's what they're going for. Interesting character, but it's just, dude, it's just fun. It's a fun book, romping sort of fantasy adventure, sword fights, demons, monsters, barbarian splendor, good friggin' stuff. From Mike Barron this year, Sherlock Holmes in Leviathan. Okay. So this is one of these books, a little bit like League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, that brings together a lot of characters from a particular time period. Mike Barron, art is by Richard Bonk. It's good, solid art. And it's a fun story, as basically it is Sherlock Holmes tracking down Captain Nemo, who's doing what Captain Nemo does. Some really nice historical stuff from this. The Emperor of Japan. I want to say, is Rasputin shot? I'm trying to remember now. It's been a little while. Oh, we do get, good old Frankenstein shows up. Yes, I call him Frankenstein. I don't worry too much about it. And he actually plays a role in all of this. And, the Master of the, I think the Master of the Earth is in this as well, with his flying machine. It's been a little while since I read it. It was fun. It was a fun book. Great art. There's the Nautilus. Good stuff. Again, kind of like a League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, but not really in the, inversion sort of way that a lot of that stuff works. Yellow Flash and John Dillard got out The Mighty Golden Patriot. They did it through Rip-a-Sin, so it's not a Rip-a-verse book, but it was through his thing he has for people that can use it for, basically they can use them to help with shipping and things and fulfillment and stuff like that. So the idea in here, and it's actually a little similar to the story in Black Phantom. It's set in World War II, but it has like, giant robots showing up here and there. Is this guy who's a pilot discovers this device that allows him to become the mighty Golden Patriot. And there's one of the big robots. And so it's a little bit like a Mighty Morphin Power Rangers kind of idea. And he's trying to learn how to use the powers. The Ratsies have somebody like him that they bring in to fight him. And this dude's kind of like a little bit better at it because he has more experience. It was a fun book. It was very action heavy. Here, in fact, here's the bad guy version. It was very action heavy, which is not a bad thing. But when you get a lot of fight scenes, you read through it quickly, and if you're buying a floppy for $1 and it's an issue where you're going to go through it quickly because it's kind of a really extended fight, not a big deal. You paid $1, you paid 75 cents for it, what have you. You want the art to be really solid, and the art's good in this one. But when you're buying more expensive graphic novels and you read through it relatively quickly, sometimes you're kind of going, it felt a little pricey for the amount of content that I got. Even though there's a page count, it's fine. There's page count and then there's page count, as we all know with a lot of modern comics that, will take a scene that would have been one panel back in the 70s and make it an entire page. And you go, I'm not really maybe getting my money's worth. So I would have liked more character work and character development in Mighty Golden Patriot. And if I'm honest, in Black Phantom as well. I'd like to know more about this character. I'd like to see his relations outside of being only this character. Now, Black Phantom is one that there's an origin to him. It's not necessarily like an alternate identity, like a Steve Rogers Captain America thing. So it's a little harder with that character to do that. Mighty Golden Patriot does have an alternate identity. So hopefully we'll get more character work if they make some of those in the future. But good art, and it's a fun story, and it's a fun concept, and glad that they did it. Also from Rippaverse this year was an anthology, Saints and Sinners. Now this has stories in it by several creators, some of them first-time comic writers. You have Chasing Ghosts by Az from Heel vs. Babyface, penciler Diogenes Neves, inker Eber Ferreira, colorist Andrew Kramer, A Cross to Bear by J. David, Drunk 3PO, interior art Chris Bolson, colorist Guilherme Lindenberg Mendez. I want to get that right. The Weight of Restraint by Eric D. July, with interior artist Elias Martins and colorist Diego Albuquerque. Bone God by Callum Edmonds, known as Mahler, online, with interior art by Will Conrad, colorist Bruno Heng. The Underdog by the Saska Sisters, interior artist Cliff Richards, colorist Marco Pelandra, and One Little Push by Will Jordan, the Critical Drinker, Carlos Reno doing the interior art, and Marco Lesko as the colorist. It was a solid book. I believe the story Az wrote it's the first one, Chasing Ghosts, was my favorite one, where it's getting into, her name is just Ingrid, who's part of Alpha Corps, kind of getting into her character a little bit more, like a solo adventure for her. I enjoyed that. Drunk 3PO's story gets into a man who is trying to reconnect with Christ, with which is spiritual, life, who's maybe done some bad things. He's kind of like a cyborg thing going. Eric July. His story involves a dude breaking out of prison. Bone God from Mahler is a really interesting one. He wrote apparently enough to write like about 4 years worth of comics. So I think there was a little challenge in getting it down. He's known as the Long Man. He does very, very long reviews of films. So that's something he'd have to work on, I think. The Saska's right one involves wrestling, which is a part of it all. And Critical Drinkers, One Little Push involves a guy with a ability to manipulate minds a little bit. But good. It was a good book. I enjoyed it. And I would like to see the characters continued, whether they do a Saints and Sinners 2 that follows up on the stories, because there's more to be told on all of them, or whether they showed up in other books. But I like the addition of these characters to the Rippaverse. Okay. I have a huge stack here growing that I'm trying to make sure things do not fall, because that would be a tragedy. All right, we're almost done with this stack. Yeah, I got a lot of indie books this year. I did indeed. Squid Williams. This is one of those that just sort of popped up like on X, where I'm like going, okay, where has this been all my life? Done by Dan Thompson. You notice there's sort of a gold key sort of look to the cover. You get some fake ads, Sugar Frosted Funnies here, which is coming soon. So that's going to be a book they're doing. But I know I think there was another fake ad in here. Maybe not. Maybe I'm wrong on that one. Okay. I am wrong on that one. But so this is like, it's sort of like a Steve Cannon kind of character. Little Johnny Quest to it. Pirates and bad guys, the uncharted Seven Fangs of the Tiger Islands. I loved this. I love this book. And you also get these sort of funny little, funny animal things that sort of hook up with it, that were actually pretty funny. I gotta say they did a good job. A little bit of a Hanna-Barbera vibe. This is kind of, I love this kind of stuff. This is right up my alley. Super glad that I found this one. Can't remember who it was who sort of made me aware of it, like on X or Twitter or what have you. But awesome stuff. Teen Force 5. One of the good things about X is it allows comic book creators to get their stuff out there. And there are some channels, I don't know what you want to call them, who will say, hey, you got something, promote it. And I try to follow those and then follow up on it, look at the things being promoted. So Teen Force 5 is kind of like a little bit like a Teen Titans kind of thing, with these young superheroes. It is part of a wider universe from Blind Squirrel Comics, I should say. Charlie McKelvey, writer, creator, publisher. Stephen Doltia. Script assists Oliver Castaneda. Pencils, inks. HDE letters. Matt James, colors and rendering. Suzanne McElvey, associate editor. Vito Del Sante, editor-in-chief. It was good. It was good. I liked it. I think I'll keep up with this one. The characters were interesting. The characters were fun, well designed, well drawn. The art is good. I felt like I wanted a little bit more, and some of the interactions were, to me, a little awkward just in terms of the dialogue. But overall, I was pretty pleased with Teen Force 5. I'd like to see what they come up with moving forward. I might check out some more of the Blind Squirrel comics as well as I go. All right, what do we got? We got just a couple, three more, including a couple more from Rippaverse. Like I said, man, 2025, they started putting out a lot of material. It was slow at first, and that was kind of like, we got to wait. I want to see what happens with these characters. They picked up the pace. So we got Yaira 2 and 3. I don't go foil cover often, but I really, really liked the cover image. I liked the design on that one. So this is written by the Saska sisters, Deborah Carita doing the art, Tiago Gomez and 137 Studio, inkers, J. Brown colorist, Invisible Art Studio, letterer, Andrew Rodriguez, lead editor, Kanan White, lead art editor, Igor Texera, art editor, Carol Brown, assistant editor-in-chief, Eric July, editor-in-chief. Got a lot of names there. So this continues the Yaira story. She is sort of like, kind of like a goddess. I mean, if you were looking for, you know, a sort of Marvel Comics equivalency, you know, she would maybe be the Thor of the Rippaverse at this point. Obviously, a lot of differences in the characters. But this, they're doing some interesting stuff. It brings in Neptune. You know, they're building this whole comic book universe. So what are the ground rules? Like they've already said, we're not doing any time travel and we're not doing any parallel Earths. We're not going down that one. So yeah, we're not doing that. But what space travel? How does that work? How does magic work? Where does it come from? Are there actual gods or are there aliens who seem to be gods and all that kind of stuff? They're sort of nailing down here in Yaira. And they open up some interesting stuff in issue 2 and 3. They really do. I think they're doing some very cool stuff with Yaira. That's another one that I've been actively collecting, and I think I will continue with this one moving forward. Because in Yaira 3, they bring in kind of a whole new set of characters. Looks like it may interact with another book I'm going to look at in just a second here. Where, again, you're just sort of going, all right, well, how does this work? Well, where does this all fit in? So, you know, with Rippaverse, we're at that same stage that like the Marvel Universe was in right at the beginning. Fantastic Four, Spider-Man, Thor, but it's like, oh, there's an Atlantis. Okay. And there's aliens. All right. And this is how this works. Gamma radiation turns people into big green monsters or maybe other things as well. And it's like, how does it all fit in? What's the cosmology? What are the rules? Fun to read the comics from that period as they're sort of feeling things out, because it wasn't like Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, Ditko, whoever, sitting down in a room saying, this is how the Marvel Universe is going to work. It was, let's write adventure stories and then keep track of what we're doing to some degree, you know, and things start building and you start getting rules and you start getting canon, you know. Ditko comes in with Doctor Strange. It's like, all right, now we got this whole magical stuff and other dimensions. Like, how's all that going to work? Fun stuff to read when they're first, you know, putting all of that together. A couple more to look at here. Wolf and Batsy, number 13, from Brian Baugh. He likes to put little critters in with the comics, which is just one of the fun things. Do I have like, that was weird. It's like double tape on that one somehow. I don't think I did that. I guess he did that. So Wolf and Batsy, wow, some other stuff in there too. Wolf and Batsy are a vampire and a werewolf who are friends. And they go on adventures together. Basically, they are outcasts. And they're trying to find a home. They're trying to find a place they can live. The problem is, you know, werewolves sometimes, you know, wolf out, cause a lot of problems. Batsy is a vampire, and vampires drink blood. And, you know, she's a fun character because, like, she's not bad, but she's also bad at the same time. Like, you know, it's sort of the way a dog will bite you because it's scared. Oh, Man of War 665. Hey, man. Made it by the damnedest. Okay. Glad you are here. So, yeah, it's like she's not evil or anything, you know. Exactly. Like, she's not doing stuff to be evil, but at the same time, you know, if she's hungry and there's a person within reach, she might bite them and suck their blood. And And, and they go for like the sexy vampire girl stuff. That's what Brian does. So I can't show every single page. But this one involves them going underground. There's like these rats, and there's like weird mushrooms and all sorts of stuff like that. You get the idea. Brian Baugh's work is very much in the vein of like underground comics and stuff like that, which is cool. It's an important part of American pop culture. Sometimes it can be a problematic part of American pop culture, but it is certainly an important part of it. And so once I found Wolf and Batsy, and I'd seen his art on the DeviantArt site way back when, and I'd seen that he had these characters that he did, and I was always like, oh man, I should look into that. And I hadn't. And although he's not doing stuff with Alterna Comics now, he was a few years back, and I went to their site because I saw that they did newsprint comics. I was like, oh, that's cool. And there's Wolf and Batsy. I'm like, oh, I know these characters. Okay. And it was like, a good affordable price. So I got a bunch of them, really enjoyed them. And I've stayed with Wolf and Batsy ever since. I follow Brian on X, and he's just he's a good guy. He's just a genuinely good guy. So I love supporting him as well. Last one, Zalen. From the Rippaverse. This is them getting a little bit into science fiction. He's sort of like, God, he's almost like a Superman character, kind of like Brian Solari in terms of his powers, although he does have to like rest up to get things back. But this is beautiful art in this thing. I mean, beautiful art. This is the one where they had an error on a page that I was like, I didn't even hardly notice it, where you could get, a revised book and a credit and stuff. They do a good job taking care of the fans, but a very interesting character, great art. And the end of the book has him, he's got a threat he's got to take care of. And it leads him to this little planet called Earth. And like I said, when I talked about Yaira, I think they're doing some stuff that may bring Zalen in, at least tangentially, into there. But great character. It's a Chuck Dixon book. He's doing my art. Joe Bennett doing the art, just like on Horseman. Fabio Johnson, inker. Marcos Martins, colorist. I like Zalen a lot. That's one. It's one of the ones where they teased it, and I'm like, that looks really cool. And and then it came out, and I'm like, okay, I'm in on Zalen. I like this character. And that's it, man. Those are the indie books that I got this year, I believe. If I missed something, I apologize for missing it. So what were some of my absolute faves, man? Zalen's probably one of them. I really dig the character. Really excited to see where it goes. Wolf and Batsy. Again, this is a series that I've really, really, really enjoyed going through. Squid Williams it's a style and it's a design that I really, really adore. Saints and Sinners that was a good book. That was a really good book. I'd say just as a story alone would probably get right up into my favorites. As series go, I gotta put King Cryptid in there. I just really like what Samedi is doing with that property. I hate using terms like that property, but I guess it makes sense. Just the way there's different styles with different art styles, but it's all blending together and it's all going somewhere, and that's what I'm really excited with it is like, where's it going exactly? What's it all going to be in the end? I really enjoy ISOM number 3. I like that whole series. I remember when I got it, it was one of those where I'm going, this dude's new. This dude is new to doing this kind of thing. He's a comic book fan. Can he take it to that next level? I don't know. And I remember getting the first book and being like, oh man, I hope it like doesn't really suck. Like I hope, I hope all this is gonna. And I sat and read that thing cover to cover. I read it cover to cover. I liked his relationships with, his family in it. I really enjoyed that. It worked for me as a character. And I'm like, there's a lot good here to move with. Blood Realm's up there too. I like series. I like floppies more than I like little graphic novels. I honestly, I think there's a lot of interesting things that you can do with that stuff. And graphic novels are tougher. You need to do a longer storyline rather than bits. And when you do bits, you have a little bit more freedom, to do that stuff. I think I'm gonna, I think I'd put Atlantean right in that top tier for me. Again, it's a series. It's a little bit more like a graphic novel because of the size, but it's really like reading a Savage Sword of Conan. So who are kind of in my top tier this year? I got to go. And this is not to say these are like the absolute highest quality books, blah, blah, blah. These are the ones that like, I'm really looking forward to the next one. I got to go the Atlantean. I got to go Blood Realm. I love what he's doing with that. God, they put out a record, a red vinyl record that I was so close biting on, but I made an assumption. I go, well, Blood Realm, it's going to probably be sort of a metal thing. In some modern stuff, like that's the really, really heavy kind of I'm not as into as some of the older metal that I like. So I'm going, I don't need to put the expense out. And then I listened to a sample of it and it was not what I was expecting. And it was very cool. And I wish I had done that. I'm going to put ISOM 3 up in here. Again, that's the end of the ISOM's first arc. So I don't know what the plans are with the character in the near future, but I really enjoyed the overall. King Cryptid, I dig. Squid Williams is just, I'm hoping for more from Dan Thompson. It's just friggin' fun. Wolf and Batsy is up in there as well for me. Again, that's a series that I'm really enjoying. And Zaylan. Yeah, I think in terms of new characters from the Rippaverse, Zaylan's probably my favorite for 2025. And I'm looking forward to following that character through. So there we go. Superman plus Nexus equals Zaylan. Yeah, a little bit. I mean, the one character that I really thought of is Gladiator from Marvel, because he's essentially Superman, but he's from another, species, from the, he's Shi'ar, right? I think he's one of the Shi'ar with their, they basically, with the Shi'ar, they kind of made like their own Legion of Superheroes or Justice League. It's not like they're going for super, like, let's do our version of Superman, like Hyperion and the Squadron Supreme. But I mean, he has like those kind of abilities, does Gladiator. And that came to mind with Zaylan as well. There's some really interesting side characters though in Zaylan. There's a lot of good stuff there. They got another sci-fi thing they're doing that I haven't bought into, because again, I'm at a point where it's like, Rippaverse is putting a lot of stuff out and they ain't cheap. I'm not saying they're overpriced, but it's a bit of money you got to devote to it, to a particular book. So I'm kind of like, okay, I was there for all of it at the very beginning. Now I'm kind of going, picking and choosing a little bit. Okay, going to finish out Great War of Separation. Any more ISOM comes out, I'm there. Zaylan, I'm in on. I like Alpha Core. I really liked Alpha Core last year. So looking forward to the next one in that. Probably sticking with Horseman because I like that storyline of this guy who kind of screws up a lot, who's trying to figure it all out. I want to see how that goes. A lot of good Chuck Dixon stuff from Rippaverse, but I'm definitely at a point where it's like, that looks kind of cool, but no, I don't think I'm going to buy that one. I got to leave that one aside. Again, it's not like anything personal with anything. It's just picking and choosing. What am I doing? Because I know there's going to be some cool new stuff coming out in 2026 that I'm going to want to explore, That's kind of the idea behind the channel here of finding those little hidden gems. And so I know there's going to be other ones that I got a couple cool books coming that aren't going to get here in time for 2025. But David Dalmatian's Carl Kolchak meets like the classic monsters is coming. Looking forward to that, what he does with it. I hope he does a good job with it. And David Hartman, he's got a couple books, but one of them is coming soon. So we'll have some cool stuff here in January to talk about. And I'm sure all sorts of neat stuff is going to be popping up. But that will do it for this live stream, because me and the wife got some stuff we got to get done. And I probably went longer than I should have. Coming this week in Dad's Den, Justice League America number 51, Justice League Europe number 27, the penultimate Justice League Monday for 2025. We just got one more of those after. And then we're going on to Walt Simonson's Thor in 2026. Yesterday, I had all the long boxes and short boxes out. What I do is I keep a box with the books I'm going to be reviewing for the year. You know, that series I'm reviewing, so that it's easy, handy. I can grab stuff quickly. So I was putting the Thor stuff in there, putting the Justice League stuff back in the normal long boxes, moving everything around, realizing I probably have too many comics. I actually found a stack about that big of stuff that I can weed out. I got a few more of those I need to do. But so looking forward to Thor. Love that series. But we got a couple more Justice League Mondays. So that's coming on Monday. On Wednesday, I'm doing a review of Bright Eyes, which is a Christmas adjacent Shirley Temple movie. Yes, a Shirley Temple movie. I'm not a Shirley Temple guy, honestly. But if you're talking pop culture, Shirley Temple was huge in the pop culture of America in the 30s and into the 40s. She just was huge. And it's actually a pretty good movie. There were some twists in it and some melodrama, and like, you forget, like, stuff meant for kids back in the 30s sometimes could be it ain't, it ain't Blue's Clues. You know what I mean? Or what's the new one? Bluey. It ain't Bluey. Like Pinocchio and stuff like that. Bambi could kind of freak kids out, but they were kind of leveling with them. They hadn't gotten super far into the saccharine sweet kiddie stuff that would maybe come down much later. So there's some pretty crazy stuff that happens in Bright Eyes. I did enjoy the movie. So got that coming on Wednesday, Christmas Eve. And then on Friday, I'm going to be doing a little show and tell of a toy from my own personal history that I absolutely loved. Richard Scarry's, I always said Richard Scarry when I was a kid, but apparently it's Scarry. Richard Scarry's Puzzle Town, based on his Busy Town books with like Huck the Cat and Lowly Worm and all that stuff. Those are books that I was like, man, they were such a huge part of my childhood. And this is a very cool play set. They did several of them. I have one. It survived childhood. I'm going to show that off. The other ones are a constant temptation, like in auctions online, eBay, that I'm always going, no, you have no room for these. What are you going to do with them? But like when I was a kid, I wanted them so freaking bad that sort of inner child is still doing, buy it, just buy it. Go for it. Just do it. I've held off, but I am going to show off Puzzle Town. Okay, folks, I think that will do it for Dad's Den. Live in the Den, number 45, the 45th one that I've done. I've had a great time this year doing them. I got one more for this year. Next on the 28th. And then into 2026. And I hope everybody has a really freaking awesome Christmas, a peaceful Christmas. There's been so much chaos lately. I think we could all use a respite and a peaceful week. Peaceful Christmas week would be really, really nice. I hope you get some cool presents, have some fun with friends and family, reconnect with folks, have something great to eat on Christmas. If you're going through tough times, man, stick with it. We all need you here. We're all rooting for you. Things can absolutely get better and turn around for you if you've had some hard times. I know some folks who are having some hard times, and, I'm with you, man. And God is with you. So stick with it. But that'll do it for this one, folks. I will see you next time. God bless everybody. Please be kind to everyone. Have a little bit of fun out there, and I will see you hopefully soon in Dad's Den of Pop.